Beautiful. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, especially my special guest and conversation partner, Otto Collins, today. Otto, who is both a peer to me, becoming a dear friend, and also someone who I personally consider the best relationship coach in the world. And I reached out to Otto recently and asked him, Otto, why don't we get on camera, hit record, and talk about a relationship distinction that you came up at our last coaching school weekend? And here we are today. Nice to see you.
Johannes, it is so awesome to be with you, and I love being with you. I love what you're up to in the world, and I'm glad to be here to talk about this distinction.
Perfect. Do you want to say or add anything else about who you are and what you do?
Well, I guess for a little context, a couple of things I'll say. I've been a relationship and a life coach since 1999. And I've also been in business my entire life as well. I was an account executive. I sold radio advertising for 17 years, and I sold TV advertising for 4. I've worked in the banking industry for about 7 years. And I've been a relationship and life coach. So I come at things kind of holistically as it relates to business, relationships, marriage, all of those kind of things. I get it, so I really do. So perfect for this audience that, your people.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's the way I've gotten to know you, not only knowing about your experience, but also how you showed up and how you were being in those moments and hours that we spent together in London, that I already got so inspired by and already got so much out of it, especially with respect to relationships, your relationship, and also how you see relationships and how you help other people improve their relationships. And you came up with a distinction the last time we met in London. Can you talk to us and tell us about that distinction, please?
Yeah, the distinction is something that I started calling the $1 million marriage idea. And the $1 million marriage idea it came about because I had this thought that most people interact with their spouse, their partner, the people that are important in their life, as if that relationship is worth 49 cents instead of $1 million.
Mm.
And the question came up for me is, okay, what's the difference? Okay, I'm married to the incredible Susie.
Mm.
She's the most amazing woman ever. We're so connected on so many levels. I mean, she's, in addition to being my soulmate and somebody who I totally love, I just really see her as somebody that's truly is incredible. And what have I done right there? I've created her.
Mm.
And that's the beauty of this distinction of a $1 million marriage or relationship, Johannes, is most people don't create their relationships on purpose.
Mm.
And that's where the 49-cent part of the distinction comes in, is the question of, if I wanted to have $1 million or €1 million relationship, and this is just a metaphor,
Yeah.
it could be the marriage or the relationship could be worth $100 million. In fact, somebody asked me, they said, well, what value would you place on your marriage or your relationship with Susie? And I said, there's no dollar figure.
Mm.
And I mean, really think about that. There's no dollar figure. If somebody said, I'll give you $100 million and you never get to be with Susie again, I'm like, nonsense. No, it's a hard, fast, quick no. And yet, so many people continue to struggle and create the 49-cent version of a marriage or relationship just because they haven't really looked at this as a creation. What am I creating? And I just think it's so powerful to see that anybody can create this idea that I'm talking about of $1 million marriage or $1 million relationship. Anybody can do this.
Mm.
But the key is it's going to be your version, not my version.
Yeah.
But that's the key.
I really love this distinction, and I already got so impacted by it a couple of months ago when I first heard it, a couple of days ago when I picked it up again and was reminded of it in a different conversation. And I mean, before diving deeper into the distinction, because I find it
Yeah,
fascinating, and of course, we could talk about this for hours and days.
right.
What does creating a $1 million marriage or relationship have to do with leadership? Right? I'm usually, my clients are usually leaders, executives, and they have a lot on their minds. They have business on their minds. And sometimes they're really aware that some aspects of their life are suffering or not in the state that they could be or maybe even should be. So why is this topic relevant for leaders? What does it have to do with leadership, in your opinion?
Well, it has everything to do with leadership and leaders. And I'll talk about two or three different things. We'll see how this goes. But the first thing is there's no relationship. If you are married or if you are in a what I would call a primary relationship, you've been with somebody for a while and you consider them to be your partner. There's no relationship more important than that. That relationship affects everything.
Hmm.
And so if that relationship affects everything, and it does, so imagine that you're in this relationship or you're in this marriage and things aren't going really well. What do you typically do? You shut things off and you go to work and you try to be this amazing leader. And then you've got these challenges from this relationship or this marriage that are leaking into that.
Hmm.
There's a line I heard from somebody one time, and it kind of relates to this. Is the woman talked about you can't be repressing in one area and have it not show up in another part of your life, because we're holistic beings, Johannes.
Hmm.
We aren't just leaders in business or leaders in the community. And then it's like, well, I'll just let this go over here. It doesn't work like that.
Hmm.
A lot of people try to make it work like that. But to be as 100% conscious of how am I creating my relationship or my marriage, and is it, am I putting the same energy or more into that as I am creating my business, creating my team, creating the products, whatever it is that you're up to in the world? That should be just as important to you. And if it's not, it's leaking into the other part of your business and into the other parts of your life.
Hmm.
So that's the one thing. And secondly, oh my goodness, just the energy of it, that if things aren't going as well as you would like, and I'll even say there's two aspects to this. There's if things aren't going the way you like, and then there's another part, which is there's a whole nother level of possibilities that most people don't see. And then it's like, how does this connect to the business? It's the energy that you bring and just the space within yourself to bring ideas and connection, and to connect with your leadership team, or to connect with other people in other organizations, or your own organization, or the community, or the world, depending on what you're up to. That's affected by how open you are. People can feel you.
Mm.
And I don't think there's anything more important than connection. And again, if you're shut down even a little bit in this other area, that's going to come out. That's going to come out as you're leading your team, as you're being a leader in the community or the world. That's going to come out.
Yeah. I recently stumbled over a Japanese proverb, which really stuck with me. And it is, life without endeavor is like entering a jewel mine and coming out with empty hands.
Mm.
And I thought, man, relationships are such a jewel mine.
Mm-hmm.
And, way too often we come out empty-handed. And you've probably heard the saying, how we do one thing, we do everything, or how we're being, in one area of our life, we're being everywhere. There's
Yeah.
something about how we're creating our marriage. And I love that you put so much emphasis on the word creating. How we're creating our relationship, our marriage is a a symptom of how we're using our creative power everywhere.
Yeah. It really is. And you know what, where it gets really interesting for me is when it comes to our relationships and our marriages, most people create them by default and not on purpose.
Hmm.
If you were to ask most people, even people that have been in relationships or married for many years, if you were to ask them, well, how much time have you actually spent with your partner, with your spouse, with the person you're with? How much time have you spent actually talking about and creating the kind of relationship that you wanted? In most cases, not all, but in most cases, you're going to get crickets. You're going to get silence because most people don't spend the time creating that. And there's so many different ways to create a fabulous or an amazing or an incredible relationship with a spouse, partner, lover that's $1 million marriage. That's the distinction we're talking about here. But there's so many ways to do it. And most people don't, number one, take the time to do it. Number two, they don't make it important and they don't see the importance of it. And then they wake up 30 years later going, well, what's happening here? And there's an emptiness that they feel inside. And then they just kind of ride out life. And that's not the way a leader does things in the world. And yet, so many times I've seen it where that's the case. That's exactly what happens is you don't consciously decide, you don't consciously create. And that's really the essence of what I'm talking about is this creation. How would I want it? What would feel good? What would be good? And it's wow. I mean, what's on offer there
Yeah.
to really take that in? My best advocate, my best, the person in the world who gets me the most, who supports me the most, who not only loves me the most, but she sees all aspects of me. She sees my faults, she sees my good points, and she sees my greatness. And that is so helpful
Hmm.
when I'm trying to create in the world. It would be foolish for someone to ignore that and to not see how important that is, to do that as a conscious creation instead of just letting it happen.
Yeah. Because you said something in the very beginning about Susie, which was that she's your soulmate.
Yeah.
And now people could get the mistaken idea that, Otto got lucky, easy for him to say, because he
Yeah,
found his soulmate.
right.
And so that's why the relationship is amazing. And that's why things are falling into place.
Yeah, it's very easy for people to think that. Yeah. And this is a question I really I've spent a lot of time thinking about. And what I will tell you is, yes, Susie and I did have this soulmate experience way back in 1999. And I don't care what kind of relationship or marriage that you are in now or the one you will be in, you can create something incredible.
Mm.
That's a trick of the mind, by the way. Otto created this. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. That's a trick of the mind, a trick of the ego to plant a seed of doubt. To whereas if you go back to what is a creation, yeah, you wouldn't do that in business. You wouldn't say, my friend over here created a great business, so I'm not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
My other friend here, they're a great leader. Well, how can I do that? That's the essence of the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is just because they had some other aspect to it. No, it's a creation. And I love the fact that that's where people's mind goes a lot of times. And it totally bypasses the creation aspect of how much we get to decide how we're going to show up in the world
Yeah.
and how we're going to show up in our marriages and how we're going to show up in our family. It totally that. And that's a question I've been asked so many times over the years, Johannes. And it's so important for people to really see that, yeah, it's a creation and I get to do this.
Mm. Yeah, which again has everything to do with leadership, right? Because leaders basically want to go places. Leadership
Yes.
comes from, the Latin word ducere, lead, guide, go somewhere.
Yeah.
And business leaders want to go somewhere with their organization, with their team, with their results. And being a leader in a relationship is all about going somewhere where you're not right now. Not even because you have to, but because life is a jewel mine and you don't want to come out empty-handed. It's just fun,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is
Yeah. I'd love that. Totally love that. Yeah.
what is the role of being in creating a $1 million marriage?
Oh, it's everything. It's who you are being in a given moment. So I'll give you a couple of examples. You again going back to this distinction. I've seen people be kind to their leadership team. I've seen people be kind to their customers and their vendors and the people that they work with, and then they go home and they treat their spouse or their kids terribly. And so again, I think everything's holistic and it all feeds together. So that's one way that it plays out. Give me your question one more time. So I
What
think
is
I
the
got.
role? What is the role of being in creating a $1 million marriage?
So who you are being is, so going back to that, are you being love? Are you being kindness? Are you being someone that gives your spouse the benefit of the doubt instead of being harsh or critical? Are you being someone who allows themselves to be vulnerable when it might be difficult to be that way? Vulnerability, by the way, is a superpower.
Hmm.
And a lot of times as business when we're in business or we're in leadership, we don't see that vulnerability is a superpower because we see that that's something to defend against and to not look at. But in a relationship that you really care about, vulnerability is a superpower because that's where the gold and that's where the jewels are. But who you are being is when in the marriage, in the relationship, am I being someone who is supportive? Am I being someone who's a leader? And a leader doesn't mean that you're the one that gets to decide everything unless it's decided that you're the one that gets to decide everything.
Mm.
So who you are being could be, I'm the man or the woman who is consciously creating his life or her life in all ways, including their marriage or relationships. And the being part of this is, who are you going to show up as? Are you going to show up as this person that has brought all the negative stuff from past relationships or marriage into your present one, and you're going to think of them just like all the other people that you've been in relationship with, even though it was 30 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever? Or are you going to look at them with brand new eyes?
Mm.
Yeah. Who you're being, yeah, that's some of the ways that it plays out, and it's everything.
Yeah. What just occurs to me, can I share with you a line in my document that refers to my core being and my aspiration of being in my relationship,
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
which is I am the best husband and lover to my inspiring, intelligent, beautiful, and desirable wife, amazing Anna.
I love that. So that's a creation.
Yes.
That's a creation. That in itself is you taking a stand for who you're going to be as it relates to that relationship with Anna.
Yeah. And yeah, I am being that she is amazing, intelligent, inspiring, beautiful, and desirable. And I know that I am that at my core, and I know that it's a mountain without a top, and there is infinite room to be that
Yes.
more and more of the time.
Yes. There's always more. There's always another layer. There's always another level.
Yeah.
And yes, it is a mountain without a top.
And it's easy to think that, $1 million marriage or relationship is a result, you could also see it as a process and a journey. So the question could be, what do I need to do to create that? And for us, I think for our understanding, it always comes back to all doing is the fruit of the seed of being. So who do I need to be? Who do I want
Yeah.
to be in order to create the doing that creates the $1 million marriage?
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that because many years ago, my wife Susie and I wrote this book called Magic Relationship Words. We wrote this book because people kept saying, Otto and Susie, my relationship or my marriage would be so great if I just knew the right words to say to them. And we wrote the book, but we also said, you'll find your own words when you come from the place that these words are coming from within us of how we're sharing them. So you don't need, any kind of crutch. If you really saw your wife as amazing, I don't need to tell you what words to say. They're going to come.
Yeah.
I don't need to tell you about kindness. I don't need to tell you about respect unless you see that there's some reason that you have to guard yourself against those things. And unfortunately, many times that's what shows up for people is the opposite of being love, of being kindness, of being in a leadership position, at home, it shows up differently. And so this whole question of, who are you being, it gets really fun and really fascinating really quick, because your results that are coming from that are pretty evident.
Yeah. Time is really flying by here, Otto, and I'm really enjoying this. And being conscious of time, I think I want to ask you one last bigger question, which is, what do you see, what have you seen as the biggest obstacle towards creating $1 million relationship?
My first flinch reaction to that question is your story around a couple of things. Number one, can you even do it? And the second thing would be, what if they don't want to play? Because there's so much of the time we've had history with people we're in relationship with. I don't know if I can do it, which is really interesting because we're talking about people in leadership positions, and everyone's in a leadership position in their life, whether they know it or not, by the way. It's just a matter of how you're leading. But the question of, can I do this? And the answer to that is yes, absolutely. And then, well, I think the how shows up from there. But oh my goodness. Yeah, that's the thing, is it's this gnawing, nagging question of, can I do this? And then, are the people that are, in my life, are they going to get on board with me? And that's where the fear comes in, is the fear of, well, what happens if I rock the boat a little bit here? What if I show up and I want something a little different, or I start suggesting that? How are they going to react? Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, is the fear to overcome those kinds of questions. But here's what I will tell you. What's on the other side of those kinds of fears and those kinds of doubts, and even the lack of knowledge about how to create it, what's on the other side of that is a miracle. That's what's on the other side. It's a miracle, and it's something that most people can't even fathom, because to have this totally alive and totally vibrant and totally connected relationship at home, and to go serve your community, your colleagues, your leadership team, the stockholders, the shareholders, whoever it is that you serve, everyone is a stakeholder in some way or another. Whoever it is that is that for you, it's going to be so much more powerful if you're creating something incredible at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I was just reflecting on the same question while you were answering. And what came up for me is that, as in many areas of our life, a big obstacle is, and you basically spoke to that in other words, is insecure thinking appearing real.
Yeah.
It's like the thought, this is not for me, I can't do this. And a flavor of that is judgments,
Yeah.
is judging your partner for things that seem like they need to change first before you can create something beautiful, magnificent.
Yeah.
And I want to point people towards something here at the end of our conversation, which is actually your book, Big Fat Love, written by you and your wife. I really, really enjoyed it. I can highly recommend it to anyone who is interested in improving their relationship, creating $1 million relationship or marriage. I'm going to revisit it soon because I took so much out of it. And, for people who are interested in finding out more about this distinction, about be it being or doing to create $1 million marriage, where could people find out more about that, find out more about you, or anything that comes to mind where you would like to point them?
A couple of websites, susieandotto.com, SUSIEANDOTTO.com, or ottocollins.com. Those would be a couple of good jumping off places. I post a lot of stuff on my personal page on Facebook. And so a lot of, you can find me there as well. And I'm doing more and more there. And so it's an exciting time where, to show up and make a difference in the world. But yeah, the two websites, ottocollins.com and susieandotto.com. And if anyone has a question, I'm certainly happy to help in whatever way I can. Yeah.
Beautiful. Otto, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and it was just a teaser into this amazing and miraculous distinction and possibility for creating relationships. Thank you so much. I keep learning from you. I keep being inspired by you and your relationship, and I am very much looking forward to seeing you again in person in London soon.
It's great to be with you, and thanks so much for having me. And I love what you're up to in the world. And as I say, $1 million marriages are possible for anyone.
Powerful last words. Thanks, Otto.
You are certainly welcome.